Should I start now? Twitter?
Yeah, if you could retweet it.
Got it. And away we go on a Monday. It is the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Network. And normally Monday, you're like, oh, it's Monday. And yeah, the weather's not exactly cooperating. It's, it's drizzling. It's 45. But this is, I'm pumped. I mean, first of all, a great weekend of sports. And we've got a great week coming up. You've got obviously the Final Four coming up this weekend. Baseball season, Major League Baseball season. Your Guardians, our Guardians, will be kicking off their season Thursday night in Seattle. We're going to have plenty of Guardians talk this week, so looking forward to that. Cavaliers punched their ticket for the playoffs. So, yeah, it might be a little dreary outside, but this is going to be a fun week and a fun time of year. And damn it, it is good to have you along here on the Chico Bormann Show on the Big Play Network. Also, you can find me and us. We are a team here at Chico Show CLE. On Twitter, at Chico Show CLE. Also on YouTube. More and more of you are finding us on YouTube, and that is great. If you have not yet, go to YouTube and hit that search button, type in the Chico Bormann Show. It'll come up, and you subscribe, and you'll be good to go. And speaking of subscribing, we've got a nice promotion to tell you about. Told you a little bit about this last Friday, but I mentioned, again, a fun week upcoming. It's going to culminate on Friday with an autographed Brian Sipe jersey giveaway. That's right. You follow on Twitter at Chico Show CLE, define the giveaway, retweet that giveaway, and then subscribe to the Chico Bormann Show on YouTube to win. We're running this giveaway all week, and we'll announce, as I said, the winner on this Friday's show. So looking forward to that. All right, hey, we've got plenty to talk about. Certainly, most importantly, I want to hear from you people. 216-626-7901. That's 216-626-7901 if you want to join in the conversation. Obviously, plenty to react to over the weekend. I have to start with March Madness. And, we're always prisoners of the moment, right? We are always prisoners of the moment when it comes to, oh man, this is the best ever. This is the craziest ever. I've never seen it. But for my money, since I've been, really old enough to enjoy the NCAA tournament, this is easily the craziest I've seen it. San Diego State, Florida, FAU. What is Florida Atlantic? Yeah, Florida Atlantic. See, when you have to, what are they again? Florida Atlantic is in the Final Four. And then you've got Miami, who came back to beat Texas. Boobie Gibson, sorry. I know he had his Final Four as Texas, and Texas. And unfortunately, all those guys have been eliminated. I had Texas winning it all. And I thought it was looking good there for a while, but do not. Nick, we talked about this on Friday. We had our little parlay show after the Chico Bormann show. It was you, me, and Dave McAllister. And I remember saying, now I think we all liked Miami to possibly pull the upset. But
we look good there.
Yeah, there's other ways we certainly didn't, which we'll get to. Jimmy Larinaga, the dude can coach. And I mean, think about this. Think about the history. 17 years ago to the day, he took George Mason to the Final Four. 17 years ago. And now his Miami Hurricanes' first ever Final Four appearance, and then you've got UConn rounding it out. And UConn, one would think, has to be the favorite. Who maxes up? I remember I was watching it was either preview or our halftime show on CBS or whatever network it was, and they said, okay, who's going to be the best challenger? Who's going to give UConn the best game? And everybody, it's Texas, and Texas. And I don't think that was, I think that was a very fair statement, a very fair question to ask, and I think Texas was the right answer. They had a 13-point lead, but then Miami just would not let it go, and Miami just would not give up. And you had a guy who was perfect for from the field in Jordan Miller. Just incredible stuff. And so it is San Diego State, FAU, Miami, and UConn. I have heard that 600,000 brackets filled out, and only 6 of the 600,000 had this Final Four. Which, to be honest with you, I want to know who those 6. Who in their right mind sat down and said San Diego State? Yeah, and San Diego State's a good team. I don't need to preface it with all this, but San Diego State's a very good team. They were ranked, and obviously we've seen them play defense. And quite honestly, I think I'd like to see if UConn does knock off Miami. I'll be rooting for Larinaga. Sorry, John Fanta. He'll be joining us at 2:30. But if UConn does beat Miami, I want to see San Diego State. Those guys play D, and they just they talk about twitch athletes and bouncy and that. Like San Diego State's just always where the ball's at, and they're always harassing you, but they don't do it in a they're just so athletic, You saw the blocked shots they had against against Bama. They had some against Creighton too, but they play hard. They play it the right way. Now San Diego State and Creighton, a lot of controversy in that one, guys and gals. There is no right answer for this question. Okay, there is no right answer to the question. Should the foul have been called? They were calling San Diego State and Creighton a certain way. They let them play. Like there were only, I think I heard 19 free throws combined in San Diego State Creighton. Miami and Texas, there were 44, I think. So, a lot of times, and I don't look. It's not easy being an official. Okay, I know it's going to be easy to go ahead and criticize them and tell them, oh, they're terrible and. It's not easy to do. But in a situation like San Diego State and Creighton, everybody in the gymnasium knew it was going to be a physical contest, and it was. And then all of a sudden, you're letting a lot of stuff go, and then Creighton, clearly it was a foul. I don't think anyone, Nick. You probably saw the clip. You saw it live, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah.
I mean, his guy, he'd gotten by his guy, And it was textbook, oh my gosh, he's by me, I got to grab him. It wasn't like a hard foul, but it was nonetheless, it was absolutely a foul.
I think the hand on the hip, though, is what did him in, especially on a floater like that. Kind of hand on the hip prevented him from, his upward movement of getting that ball off, and it allowed his other hand to come around and block that shot.
Yeah.
At least gave him an attempt to. So, I mean, yes, that's a foul. Yes, you have to call it in that situation. I don't know. I don't know that I like it in that situation there either, Chico. But I thought it was a foul. But yeah, I probably don't call that there in that situation.
216-626-7901. I want to hear from you folks on this. Like I really, because it is the age-old discussion that we're always going to have. Wasn't it in the Philly? The Philly game in the was it the NFC title game or was it the Super Bowl? No, it was. Yeah,
was it the Super Bowl? I thought it was the title game.
Yeah, it was the NFC title game. You're right. And now the official basically got off on that one because essentially, I think I can't remember who it was. Whoever the defensive back was said, yeah, you know what? I grabbed him. It was pass interference. Okay, then everything's... Now, you still had that controversy, though. Like, should that be called in that moment? And I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. I really, I think if you feel that, yeah, it has to be called, if it's a foul, if it's a penalty, whatever, you've got to call it. You can't, take into account the time left in the game and the circumstances. You can't do that. If it's a foul, it's a foul, it's a foul. But then others that would say, man, that you want the players to decide. Yeah, you want the players to decide, and I have no problem saying that, but you want the player to be able to decide it fair and square. And, I mean, he was fouled. Personally, I mean, just my opinion, I'm glad San Diego State advanced. Like of the 4 teams remaining, believe it or not, they're actually my favorite team to watch just because they are just watching them play defense. And normally, oh yeah, I don't really, but they're so intense and just, I mean, absolutely 40 minutes of hell. It's like you go back to Nolan Richardson and the Razorbacks. 40 minutes of hell. That's kind of what San Diego State feels like to me. But the idea of, do you make that call in that situation? Should you take into account? Should you factor in? You're the official. And by the way, we say all of this, and let's set the circumstances, set the scenario again. I mean, all eyes are on this guy, right? I mean, it's happening in real time. You don't have a chance to, hang on. You know what? This could be a really important play. Could you guys go in slow motion here so I can really see how this? No, I mean, it's coming a mile a minute, and every single eyeball, not only in the gym, but on televisions across the country, across the world, are focused right on you. What are you going to call? I can't, and I'm really not trying to ride the fence on this. I think most of you know that that's not what I do. But I think this is one where I can see, I just can, both sides of the equation. Now, where I think it gets interesting is, okay, hey, if you called it a certain way all game, which clearly they did. I mean, they swallowed their whistles. So if you're going to call it that way, fine, but then you have to call it that way the entire game. You can't make an exception for, well, you know what, that one, I have no problem saying, and I don't think anybody would, that it was a foul. But again, it's just like the NFL. It's just it's anything. Well, we always say, well, hey, if it's a foul, if it's pass interference, or if it's roughing the quarterback, and that's going to be getting looked at, by the way, at the owners' meetings this week. We'll get into that in a second. That's where I won't be riding a fence, kids. You can bet your ass on that. But like, roughing the passer and pass interference and foul. These are, a lot of times very debatable calls. They usually are very debatable calls. And, officials are taught, hey, if it's, I mean, they're told by their, head of officiating or whoever is in charge, if it's a foul, you call it. But we all know, like, let's not be naive. We all know that in certain cases, certain situations, you quote unquote swallow that whistle. And I have no problem with the foul being called. I thought Creighton, Greg McDermott handled it very classily. Again, this is a situation much like that pass interference call in the NFC title game. Same thing. Similar anyway. Greg McDermott said, look, there were a lot of plays to be made. Yeah, I think we got fouled? Sure, I do. But it didn't come down to that one play. But, in crunch time with the time, with, the circumstances, what's on the line, yeah, it is that way. That's how it's going to be. That's, you're going to be looking at this situation and saying, oh man, but he's got to know that in that moment you can't do that. So hope to get your thoughts on that. Again, 216-626-7901, 216-626-7901. Now, one of the questions that I think is flying around here, because it has been, this is easily the craziest I've seen since I've been alive, is this just an aberration, or is this going to become more the norm? Now, not every year, but are we going to see some sort of a transition into this craziness? We always have craziness in the NCAA tournament. It's what makes March Madness, and just my opinion, it's what makes March Madness the greatest sports spectacle there is. But I always say too, that when you have all of these upsets early on, yes, that's fun. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, well, we want that, we want chalk on chalk. That's what we're looking for. So is this year going to be the norm? Is this year going to be what we should, think we're going to see from here on out? I don't think so. But I will say there are a couple elements to this. And Nick, I'm sure you would agree with me. There are a couple elements to this with the new rules, and by new rules, I'm not just talking NIL, although that's in play as well. To me, the transfer portal is the effect of the transfer portal, and I guess I say it's a good thing. I always feel bad because, around here, for instance, mid-major, you're Cleveland State, you're, a lot of times, and we've seen it all the time, where a two-year guy wants to get on the big stage, wants to be recognized, wants to possibly improve his draft status if he even has any. And the best way to do that, play for a premier program. And you're going to bring this kid in, and, well, we got a lot of youth, but, man, you're going to mix in, well, you have the veteran leadership. That transfer portal, and make no mistake, we're talking, last year they had like 1,100 kids in the transfer portal. So a part of me feels like, God, I feel bad for the Cleveland States and the mid-majors who are going to lose some of these guys, but that's just the way it is now. It's one of those, we can lament it, we can complain about it, we can bitch about it, but the bottom line is it's what it is. NIL, well, that's not, it's what it is. So I think that while we won't see it as crazy as this, because keep in mind, COVID happened, and you had a lot of guys, we talk about, experience, wins out, and you had a lot of guys, San Diego State, for instance, same thing. You had a lot of guys who had third-year, fourth-year guys, even fifth-year guys, which maybe normally you wouldn't see, and a lot of that came from the pandemic and the NCAA, as they should have, allowing an extra year. So that part of the equation, we hope, is not going to happen. We're not hoping for another pandemic. But I think in terms of, the one and done, look, those athletes, the one and dones, I don't have a problem. If you're a coach that wants to bring in that type of athlete, that type of player, and that's fine. But there's going to be some out there where I think the programs now that really, really make a mark moving forward, are those that, okay, you don't want your entire roster or your entire starting five to just be those one and dones. A couple of them, sure, but dip into the transfer portal and, who knows? Some guys might be staying and not even coming from the transfer portal, might be staying because he got an NIL deal. But you get that mix, and I think that's what you're looking for. So, Nick, I would say that this is a bit of an aberration. I don't think it's going to be this crazy every year. Not that I have anything wrong with that, but I will say that the transfer portal has really evened things out where some of these schools are able to get that experience. They're not going to get the high-flying recruit maybe, but, hey, you get the right guys, the right mix, and that right perfect player to come into your program or players. Who knows if you can make a run?
Yeah, I think about it like this, Chico, and what you said, with some of the smaller schools and feeling bad for the Cleveland States of the world, the Kent States of the world with the transfer portal. Think of it like this, though. Say a guard, Nick Pidone, was at Bama. Okay, well, I'm behind Brandon Miller. Then they just brought in another 5-star. Well, I'm a 3-star. I'm 5'8". I'm not going to beat out Brandon Miller. I'm not going to beat out the kid, the freshman that they just handed a big NIL deal who's going to come. All right, well, I'm done with Alabama because I'm not going to play there. But where could I go? I could go to Cleveland State. I could go to Kent. I'm still a good player. It's just that the opportunity wasn't there for me at that bigger school.
Yeah.
So then I could come to Cleveland State, come to Kent, and get that playing time still as a premier player, just wasn't my initial destination, if that makes sense.
No, and that's a very good point. And you see that a lot. I mean, heck, we've seen that a lot in college football. Kids transferring. You look at, Jalen Hurts and his situation, which, I mean, he handled himself so well. Like, okay, well, apparently, who am I to argue that Tua Tagovailoa, who just led us to the national championship, so on I go to Oklahoma, worked out pretty well for him. But you're right. Now, it can happen the other way where, I'm going to the big-time program. The only problem with going to the big-time program is if you're not getting playing time. If you're not seeing the floor, you talk about, wow, they're on the big stage. They're playing in the SEC. They're playing in the ACC. They're playing in the Big Ten. They're on the big networks. And, well, they tend not to show the guys in warm-ups on the bench. There's the ninth guy on the bench there that you want to be concerned about, folks. He's certainly a big contributor here. So, yeah, the transfer portal, in my mind, has really evened this up quite a bit. I was laughing. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Charles Barkley had an interview last night. I don't know if it was 2020 or 60 Minutes or one of those shows. And I love Sir Charles, by the way, one of my favorites. But Barkley said, this is a travesty. The NIL is a travesty. I don't like everything about it, by the way. But he said it's a travesty because here's what's going to happen. In the next 3 years, we're going to have the same 25 teams competing that have a legitimate chance. Well, isn't that pretty much what we have now? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's that different. And if any, I think you could flip that and say, well, obviously, I mean, look at Miami. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Jim Larinaga at all. Everybody knows. My guy. But, like, you got, Joseph Ruiz, who, I mean, hell, does he get to cut down the nets? Like, Miami wins, are they like, hey, Joe, get up here, buddy? Like, I mean, you get the right, all it takes is one very, very wealthy booster. And it could turn things around. Now, I know somebody's rolling their eyes. I know somebody's saying, well, listen to that going, that sounds so screwed up. Maybe it is. But as I said earlier, that's the state of college athletics right now. But for Barkley to say it's a travesty because then, in 3 or 4 years, the same 25 teams are just going to be, we have that right now. I mean, that's just, I don't see any big difference there.
You know where I think we could really see a big shakeup, at least in the college football landscape with how all of this is unfolding, and I'm really curious and excited to see how it shakes, is out there in Boulder and in Colorado with Coach Prime. I think that changes a lot because that's traditionally not a powerhouse school, but it's a powerhouse name. And I think kids will want to play for Coach Prime and just the economic opportunities that Coach Prime will bring these kids through NIL. It's going to be a media circus. Their social media pages are going to blow up. I mean, look at what happened with Miami women's basketball. I don't know if you saw this, Chico, with the
Elite Eight.
The twins that they're paying all the money. They don't even play. I mean, those twins are just on the team. No offense to them. I mean, they're D1 women athletes, but they're just on the team because they have millions of social media followers. But they have all the Miami NIL money. They're big on TikTok. So I don't think it's going to make as big of an impact as people like Charles Barkley want to think. And I do think with some of these ex-players, there's a little bit of bitterness there because Charles Barkley probably knows damn well, hey, I could have made a lot of money in my college days. Hell, look at here in Cleveland, Johnny Manziel, he was making money in college, we know, but think of how much more he would have made.
Yeah, now it's just legal.
Yeah.
You can pretty much do whatever you want.
So
yeah.
I think there's a little sourness there with some of these ex-athletes when they talk about it.
One other aspect of that, and again, the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Network. Tune us in on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Also, go to YouTube, and if you have not subscribed, go there now. The Chico Bormann Show. Hit subscribe. And you're locked in and ready to go. You want to chime in, 216-626-7901. Going to be talking more college hoops and breaking down the Final Four. John Fanta, the hometown kid, has made good. He is just absolutely an outstanding young talent with Fox, and we're going to talk to him. St. Ignatius grad, and we're going to talk to him about the Big East. He actually just so happens with UConn and really the Big East doing well in the tournament overall. And the news, Rick Pitino going to St. John's. He's going to be a perfect guest, so we'll talk to John Fanta coming up at 2:30. But one thing that I noticed, and maybe it's just me, so if I'm seeing something that's not there, let me know. Clark Kellogg, you know how they bring in, Kenny Smith and they bring in Charles Barkley. And again, I want to repeat, Charles Barkley is, I know he can ruffle some feathers. He's entertainment. He's real. I've always enjoyed Charles Barkley. But if you're Clark Kellogg, right? This guy, he pores over college basketball film. He watches so much college basketball. And it seems like somebody's got to back me up on that, or maybe you'll just hang me out to dry. That's all right. Does anyone else see a lot of tension between Clark and Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley? And I don't mean I'm sure they're friends. I'm sure they're going out for, surf and turf dinners and a few, cocktails and stuff. But you can see Clark Kellogg, like Charles Barkley will say something or Kenny Smith will say something. And you can now see facial expressions from Clark Kellogg. I always wondered about this before, but now it's becoming very, very transparent. He's not really hiding it that well. Now, they got into it a little bit at the end with that whole call we were talking about with San Diego State and Creighton. But even just talking about certain teams, you can see Clark Kellogg kind of getting a little all right, get off my lawn here. You guys, you guys are great with the NBA, but this is my territory. I know you haven't seen, and I don't blame Charles and Kenny. I mean, the network tells them this is where you're going to go, and we're going to pay you handsomely. Okay, I'll be there. But it almost feels like Clark Kellogg is starting to get beyond just a little annoyed with these guys when they break down certain teams. I don't know. Maybe is it just me?
You think by the end of this, we're going to have a complete Clark Kellogg breakdown where he just freaks out on Charles Barkley and
throws his CBS mug across the desk and
banishes him back to TNT. Go screw around with Shaq over there all you want.
Yeah, exactly. Clark is very, very good. And I'm, obviously a little bit biased being a Buckeye, but Clark Kellogg is extremely, extremely talented and very good at what he does. But I just think I've always felt like when they started to do this, I always felt like that's one of those things that it's good. The more the merrier, and everybody loves Chuck, and some people like Kenny. But would Clark get a little, just kind of, annoyed? And now, to me anyway, it seems like the facial expressions, the interruptions, now he's not putting up with it as much. He's kind of like, all right, just shut up.
And it just feels awkward, and maybe it is because we're kind of in the media landscape and we, watch these things a little bit more detailed, but it just feels awkward to watch. Like, especially that first weekend where you sit down and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot they throw Charles Barkley on these things. Like, I haven't seen him on a college basketball game all year, but here he is breaking down the 16 versus the 1,
Terrible.
It's weird.
All right, so your Final Four, as we said, is all set. San Diego State, FAU. Yeah, that's right. San Diego State, FAU, Miami, and UConn. Final Four will take place on Saturday, and then, of course, Monday night, they will have the championship game. We'll talk to John Fanta from the Big East Network, and also Fox coming up in about an hour at 2:30. If you want to chime in, I guess we'll make it simple. The fact that it's these 4 teams, is this great? Is this entertainment for you, or would you rather see, the better matchup? Would you rather see, say, Texas and UConn? Would you have rather seen, I don't know, Kansas State taking on San Diego State, which you could take Kansas State simply because of Marquise Noel. That was, you root good for FAU, but I wanted Marquise Noel to get all the way to the championship. I wanted to see as much of Marquise Noel as I possibly could, and he got knocked out. You talk about one of the some of the best point guard play we've ever seen. Yeah, you're in a conversation there with like Magic Johnson and Mateen Cleaves and other ones. But you want to chime in on that, do that, 216-626-7901. And you can also do so on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. All right. I mentioned that the owners' meetings are happening this week. I think they're in Arizona, maybe?
Oh, yeah. They're out there in Arizona.
They're in Arizona. Okay. Yeah, why wouldn't you be in Arizona? Of course you're going to be in Arizona. And as we transition here into the NFL, it feels like we talk about tension at the college basketball desk. The announcers and Clark Kellogg and Charles Barkley. I'm guessing there is quite a bit of tension for a variety of reasons at those NFL owners meetings. And wouldn't you know it, one guy in particular, Daniel Snyder, is also a topic of conversation. Imagine that. We'll talk about that when we come back. And again, don't forget, 2:30, we will talk some college hoops, get John Fanta's thoughts. Is UConn just destined to win this whole thing? Man, Danny Early has done an amazing job. We'll be back with that and talk some NFL when we come back on the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Network. All righty. So we've been telling you, and welcome back to the Chico Bormann Show. We've been telling you since our launch. Our first show was what? A week from
2 Fridays ago.
2 Fridays ago. Yeah, I was kind of thinking of how I wanted to say that. So a full week and a day we have been on the air. It has been absolutely glorious. Not without a few glitches, mainly because I'm kicking cords and don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Which also, could we just say, have you noticed that it has been 37 minutes since the show has been on air? This HDMI cord, knock on wood, Chico, hasn't been kicked out.
See, Nick, you're Italian, correct?
I am, yes.
I would say that I talk, and you're probably around, and I'm not. This is not a characterization or whatever you want to call it, but. They always say Italians talk with their hands a lot, and they make I'm Irish and German, and I would think that you watching me, you're probably like, in my worst nightmare, have I ever come across? I've never come across anybody in my family that talks with hands and feet, because I was always kicking cords out too, than me. True.
How you like that new spot up there?
I like
better.
It. I feel like bigger, like a perch.
Yeah.
It's a little. Yeah. I would always get, full disclosure here, I would always get really nervous down there because of all those cords. Like I had anxiety going, and what am I going to kick out now? And then it said I had to bring in the guests there for a few shows, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I click on that. So I am so happy up here. The important stuff is going on down there with you, and I'm just kind of here having a good time, which is how I like it. Speaking of having a good time, we've been telling you about this, and we'll continue to tell about this until Friday when we actually give it away. We've got an autographed Brian Sipe jersey giveaway. Cardiac Kids, former MVP. All you have to do, and again, this is autographed, Brian Sipe jersey. Follow at Chico Show CLE on Twitter. Find the giveaway. It's not hard to find. It's right there. Find the giveaway, retweet that giveaway, and then subscribe to the Chico Bormann Show on YouTube to win. Well, wait a minute. Can't I just do one? Can't I just, retweet on Twitter? No. This is a two-step process, kids. We're making it very... Brian Sipe busted his ass. Brian Sipe is beloved here. Not quite as much as our boy Bernie Kosar, my colleague Bernie Kosar. That's right, I call him a colleague now. Never thought I'd be saying that years ago. But Brian Sipe busted his ass. You're going to have to do a little bit of work here. So find Chico Show CLE on Twitter, retweet it, then subscribe to the Chico Bormann Show on YouTube to win. Running this giveaway all week, and we will announce the big winner coming up on Friday's show. So looking forward to that.
Also, Chico, we haven't even touched on this, and we actually did have a little bit of a bet, a little friendly wager before you arrived in studio. If people don't know, we actually will have a new producer on the show. I'm going to be taking a step back, and Michael Bohm is going to be in here every day.
You have a lot of duties. You have a lot of duties.
So. I've got a lot going on. But, so, me, Bohm, Dave, we had a little friendly wager before you arrived on if you would notice a new modification to the Big Play studio here at Burke Lakefront Airport. You just gave Bernie a shout-out as your new colleague, but...
I just saw it. I swear to I did not see it when I first walked in.
I know you did.
I mean, it looked better with hair, but, what can you do? Bohm, that's not funny. So full disclosure, Bohm used to work with me on Chico After Dark, one of my buddies. But, wow. I mean, Josh Cribbs has got to be like, really? You got to put him right below me.
So those who don't know, everybody that works with the network and some of the guests that we have on recurring, you get painted up on the wall. So Chico, welcome aboard officially to the Burke Lakefront Airport.
It's official.
Big Play studio. It's official, and you didn't even notice that your face was painted up on the wall.
Well, I wouldn't normally walk in because having been here for a week, I know who's on the wall, so I didn't make a point to look and, It's not something that should stand out because, it's me. But I am very grateful. And Cody does all this. Cody is so talented. But yes, the Chico Bormann mug is up on the wall. So any mice or rodent infestation here in the studio should be taken care of because there it is. All right. I want to get back into we'll get back into the tournament. We'll do that with John Fanta coming up at 2:30. San Diego State, FAU, Miami, UConn. I want to get to the NFL here. And you're saying, well, what's really going on? Kind of free agency's been kind of dead. I mean, Browns did get Marquise Goodwin to go along with Elijah Moore, and obviously added plenty on the defensive side of the ball. Bottom line is Andrew Berry's not done. I mean, we all know that. He's constantly, and he's probably working right now as we speak. The draft is coming up the end of the month. Okay, they don't have a lot of picks, but wheeling and dealing and all that sort of thing. But the owners are meeting in Arizona this week. God bless them. Hope they really have a good time. Sure they will. Especially Dan Snyder and Jerry Jones. Yeah, those guys will have a good time. So they're going over a few different things. One, rule changes, which are always a big deal, right? And I always laugh when they say this. Like, well, we're going to talk about some rule changes here. We're going to look at, pass interference. And then they talk about it. They talk about enforcing this or that. And then really, because not all the officials are full-time. I don't know if people realize that. Not every official is full-time. Like, you have a $25 billion industry or whatever it is. You can't afford to hire full-time employees as the guys and gals that are refereeing your games. Some of them are full-time, not all of them are. But so they make up these new rules, and they say, all right, we really want to enforce this. This is going to be very important. Oh, well, he or she hasn't a chance to really, go over them too much because they're a lawyer in their other life and back home. So all of that, rule changes and everything that they try to, pass along to us. And of course, now it's special teams, right? Now it's kickoffs. They're trying to do away with kickoffs and punts, by the way. And they are citing, take a guess, what do you think they're citing? Nick?
Player safety.
There you go. That's a buzzword for Roger Goodell. Player safety. It's very, very important here in the NFL. We, player safety is our number one priority. Not, something that we liked. No, number one is what they say. But, oh, by the way, that $25 billion industry time, well, a lot of that money comes from television money and fans, absolutely eating all of this up. So if you could play on Thursday as well, coming off that Sunday game, and we may expand the schedule. It was 16, 17, 18. We might be looking for 20 to 22 by the time it's all said and done. But know this, Roger Goodell has your safety, these players, your safety is of the utmost importance to us. Whatever. Shut up, Raj. Raj just got a new contract extension. And I'll just say this. Roger Goodell does some things well. I'll get to the things he doesn't do well in a moment. But he does do a lot of things well. And the most important part in terms of your bosses, in this case, the owners, those are the people that he reports to, essentially, is money. I mean, he has made it, not that it wasn't profitable when he took over, but he has taken it to a whole new level. No one can ever argue, no one will ever argue, certainly not me, that the National Football League, the product of the NFL, is at an all-time high in terms of entertainment, profit and television money, and now you got gambling in there, which, well, I'll tell you what, put that gambling on the back burner for a second. because it's gonna tie in eventually. So Roger Goodell, his main priority, his number one job outside of player safety, of course, is to make sure that the owners are making a lot of money. And they are, and everybody is in that industry. Good for them. Now, along the way comes a lot of hypocrisy from the NFL. And this is where I get really fired up. I can say that Roger Goodell's doing a good job from that, with that in mind, that framework of the discussion, from a money standpoint, from popularity standpoint, innovations and trying to max out every dollar you can. He has done an amazing job. That's why he just signed a new deal, and I think the new deal is for like $65 million a year. And no, I'm not exaggerating. That's what the commission makes. But I mean, if your league, if the company that you run is worth $25 billion, yeah. I mean, the head, the president's probably going to make a good portion, and Roger Goodell does. Here's where the problem comes in. First of all, I mentioned how we all know, and gambling's a big deal. We want, obviously, we pair with our good buddies at Tipico. We have, and it should be. I think it should be legal. And everybody's enjoying it, and everybody's college basketball. You got NFL, Major League Baseball is coming up. Take advantage with our good folks at Tipico. But Roger Goodell, back in, I'd have to double check on this. It was around 2011, and Roger Goodell said a couple of things. He said a lot of things, but he said a couple of things that really stood out and now are kind of biting him in the ass, kind of, because he's still got an extension. The first one was gambling, legalized gambling is never going to come to the NFL. Just no way. We are not getting into bed with that. There's just too many, games being thrown and players being paid. No way are we ever, looked right into that camera, may have said it a third time, ever going to get into bed with legalized gambling and allow it in our sport. The second thing he said was, which goes along with the first, we will never have a team in Las Vegas. I mean, what are you kidding? We're not going to put a team. If I'm telling you that we are not going to have gambling in our sport, well, what, you think I'm crazy? Of course we're not going to have a team in Las Vegas. The Raiders, that's where they're at right now, right, Nick? They moved from, they've been around, L.A., Oakland, but now they're in Las Vegas, the Raiders. So they happen. And why did they happen? Because, well, while that top priority, while they like to say, and Roger says, that it's player safety and doing the right thing, like, yeah, we're not gonna have any inkling out there that there's anything shady with our game. Oh, we can make this much. How much money did you say we can make? Well, I mean, if we're already at $25 billion, and I took it from 11 or 12 billion to 25 billion, imagine what it's going to be now with, the gambling money, the new television deals. I mean, it's going to blow up. So again, he has done a phenomenal job in making the owners money. Everybody's happy when everybody's making money. But this idea, and this is what really fries me, the idea that, like, they're concerned with player safety, one, and number two, owners, and you've heard this a lot recently, owners and executives are held to a higher standard than the players are. All right, I'm going to, this camera right here, Nick, right here. Okay, I'm going to make sure. Roger Goodell is telling you that NFL owners, guys like, we'll throw a few names out here, Daniel Snyder, guys like Jerry Jones, you've got a few others. Well, basically, you've got a few guys that are shady. But those guys have to be held to a higher standard because we can't tell our players that they have to. Now, nobody's going to be a choir boy, but you've got to use good judgment. So here's Daniel Snyder. This guy still has ownership of the Washington Commanders. Now, he bought the Commanders for, in 1999, I think the price tag was right around like $800,000, right? He is currently, he hasn't sold, he hasn't told anybody he's going to sell, definitely. He may sell if somebody's willing to pay him $7 billion. Yes, $7 billion. Apparently, right now they're squabbling because it's whoever's the leader of the pack is saying $6 billion. Daniel Snyder is dead set on $7 billion. This is a guy. Think about the Redskins / Commanders organization, right? He took over in 99. He has run that organization into the ground. Like they're not worth anything. I mean, generally, comparatively speaking, around the league, they're not worth anything. They had to they went from a 90,000 capacity to like 62,000, and even some of those seats are covered because they can't sell them. When he took over, there was a waiting list miles long. They have a waiting list now? No, they don't. Sponsors are dropping right and left. Yet, how backwards is this? He bought it for $800,000 in 1999, and it's now worth $5-6 billion, or really, you're worth whatever you can get. So it could be worth $7 billion. Now, that is the company that you want to work for. If you can go work for a company that does not produce, that basically has, just a horrible, horrible work culture, which we're going to get into in a moment, you're not producing anything. You're not, in this case, you're not winning football games. You're losing paying customers in droves, and yet your franchise is worth 5, 6, maybe $7 billion. That's a pretty nice little business you got there. Pretty nice little scam you have going there. And now, of course, everybody knows Daniel Snyder and the Commanders have come under fire. And all the poor work culture and sexual harassment claims, and I think him and I even heard the Cowboys were doing. I don't know if this was an NFC East thing or what, but like both had they had like voyeurism going on. I think for Daniel Snyder, there were reports that 2008 there was a cheerleader calendar put out. Well, he had cameras. Like basically, this is out of Porky's Revenge, for God's sake. I mean, this is a Porky's clip in the National Football League. Let's spy on these cheerleaders and then report to Daniel Snyder. Now, of course, denied, and it happened. It absolutely happened. So this is going on in Washington, maybe to a lesser extent in Dallas. If you've done that poorly running your business, and your partners in business, in this case, other NFL owners, really thought like, you know what, this guy's got, he would have been gone 10 years ago. Easily. It'd be like, well, okay, he's not selling tickets. He doesn't have a clue about getting this new stadium. Sponsors are dropping like flies. He's got all kinds of just black eyes around the organization in terms of legal issues, but we're going to keep him. And why do they keep him? You want to talk about shady. You want to talk about, oh, we're not going to Vegas. We're not getting involved in gambling, because because Daniel Snyder, make no mistake, he said it himself. He knows where all the skeletons are buried in the National Football League. Like Jerry Jones, careful. You might not be as bad as I am, but there's a few explosive things I could get out there about you. You wouldn't be too happy about. Jim Irsay, or even Roger Goodell. So think about this. In any other business, corporation, that's how this whole thing would go down. Like, we're going to vote him. Yeah, this is an easy one, right? 24 of the 31 say yes, he's gone. Not that easy. And the reason? Because they're corrupt. I mean, it's entertainment. I'm not, you're wearing Nick, you're wearing what do you got there?
This is a little baseball, Chico.
Actually, I thought it's, my eyes, from here, I thought it said the Chiefs. I thought you were wearing a Kansas City hat.
No.
Boom, don't laugh, okay? I'm getting a little old. My eyesight's going. But, the NFL is extremely entertaining, extremely popular, extremely lucrative. But can you just do whatever the hell you want to do? Yeah, that's the old boys club. There are no repercussions. So we're going to sit here. Here we go. We got the owners' meetings going on. And they're going to do this little song and dance. And by the way, Daniel Snyder, we're not just talking about like, he's in trouble with the league or he's in trouble with local authorities. Federal government. U.S. attorney generals are saying, we're going to need you to testify when you get back from France or wherever the hell it is you're at. Because what we're reading and what we're hearing from witnesses and victims is not adding up with your testimony. So, like, you've got everybody. The whole thing's crumbling down on them. Yet, nobody's going to do anything at these meetings. Does anybody really believe, Nick, do you believe that they'll get 24 of the necessary 24 of the 31 votes to get him out?
I don't think so, no. It feels like usually the owners are pretty tight with one another and they don't like change in that regard. So, yeah, I don't think that's happening. Maybe they'll get a few. It won't be a sweeping, across the board thing, but I don't think there's a chance that they could find 24.
Okay, and it's not, they don't like, I mean, you're right. They don't like change. And the Old Boys Network, once you're into that club, that is an extremely exclusive club, by the way. And not just for money, but because of what I just said. Like, yeah, of course you've got tons of money, some more than others, but it's like you don't have to answer to anybody. You can do whatever the hell you want to do, and you are protected. I mean, again, U.S. attorneys going to Roger Goodell, like, Roger, you said the NFL took over this investigation. I don't know. That's what the NFL tells every team, all the media. Whenever they take over an investigation, this is what it means. We're going to try to sweep this under the rug, but we're going to tell everybody, well, like, Kareem Hunt, Kansas City. Kansas City, you guys are too close to this thing. The NFL will take it over. And then, like, 13 months later, people will be like, somebody in the, Bucky Bishop with NFL Network. Yeah, what's your question? Raj, what's the status of the investigation right now with the Kansas City Chiefs? We are still looking into it. We've got people looking into this right now, and hopefully we're going to have. Is there a timetable? Any kind of an answer? Is a timeline? No, we're not going to rush this. We want to be very thorough. Truth is, they didn't do anything for 13 months. They just wanted it to go away. And most of the time it does, and nobody's going to call them on it. But even when the feds call them, they just continue to do what they want to do. This, I don't know what the answer is. And I'm the first one. NFL, hey, give me more of it. Fantasy football and legalized gambling with our buddies at Tipico and the lines and over-unders. And, yeah, absolutely. It's entertaining as all hell. But at what point do you draw the line? Or at what point should Roger Goodell stop trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes? I'd have more respect for the guy if he just said, look, fans, we put out an incredibly entertaining and popular product. And yes, we make a whole lot of money doing it. I could tell you that I hold the owners and they can do whatever the hell they want to do. Once you get in the Old Boys Club, it's all good. It's all smooth sailing. And, I mean, you really have to do a lot to get voted out of that. Now, right now, there's tension. Like, Jimmy Haslam gives Deshaun Watson that contract. if Stephen Bisciotti walks out of his hotel room and he goes to the elevator to go down for breakfast tomorrow morning, and Jimmy and Dee Haslam are in there, what do you think that conversation is going to be like? Stephen Bisciotti, of course, the owner of the Ravens. Lamar Jackson today, reports are that he has officially asked the Ravens to be traded, and in large part because he wants Deshaun Watson's contract. Now, I don't know if he's going to get that type of guaranteed money anywhere. We've had this conversation, but like there's tension all over the place. Those two don't like each other. Nobody likes Daniel Snyder. Nobody thinks this, like, he's an idiot. They all know he's a terrible businessman. He's got some, really just dark and just ridiculous idiosyncrasies and fetishes and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they can't do anything, or I should say won't do anything, because he holds all the cards. They're not going to vote against him because they know that, our skeletons are coming out of the closet too. How sick is that? I'm really not trying to just throw a wet blanket all over the NFL. I love it. But man, this is just, it has gotten, let's just call it what it is. It is as corrupt a business, a corporation as we have anywhere in the world. It is. It just is. Like, Nick, there is a few people are going to vote against him if they know for sure. Here's the thing. The guys that are voting no, like, he should have to sell the team or they want him out, are probably 100% certain that, you know what, my side of the street is clean. If you are the least bit skeptical and you're like, wow, maybe he knows about this or that, he probably does know, you're going to vote yes. You don't like him, but you're going to vote yes. You don't want to be thrown to the wolves. And that's exactly what he will do. And they know that's exactly what he's going to do.
There's so many comments rolling in on this, man. People on the YouTube stream, what up? Obviously, you could call the show live, 216-626-7901. We also fired up a Twitter Spaces at Chico Show CLE, so you could talk to Chico right on Spaces. I think a lot of people are agreeing with you, man. Stephen Hart weighs in on YouTube and said, player safety, my bleep. This is why Lamar should stick to forcing his guaranteed money. At some point, the dam will break and players need to protect themselves too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Stephen. Here's what I would say, though. In the case of Lamar Jackson, does he deserve a Deshaun Watson contract? Absolutely, positively, yes. But here's the reality. December, January, we were talking to Nick Shook about this last week, remember, Nick? And Nick Shook of NFL.com said, you start looking at the numbers in December and January, and this guy, if he starts a game, he ain't finishing it. You can count on one hand how many times he's done that. Now, it sucks because he's been the face of the franchise, and he is, even as a Browns fan, and yeah, I know we hate the Ravens, and that's true too, I can appreciate and downright just very much love watching Lamar Jackson play the game of football. But here's the thing. There is no team that's going to, I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think there's any team that's going to guarantee him $230 million. So the Ravens giving him $130 million, I understand why he's upset, but the only way it works, the only way he, gets what he wants is, another team has to be able to take that bite. There's been teams rumored to do that for Lamar Jackson, but talking about it, and then when push comes to shove, $230 million for a guy that has had some injuries, and God knows he's earned it over the years. That's a lot of money. A lot of money. I hope he gets it. I don't think he will. And that's why this whole Baltimore situation is so intriguing, because Baltimore wants him back. I mean, they absolutely, $130 million is nothing to scoff at. But again, if you're looking at the other side and you're looking at Lamar Jackson, he's going, if Deshaun Watson is going to get $230, I want $230, and you can't tell me that I don't deserve that.
All right, we're also live on Twitter Spaces at Chico Show CLE. I believe Greg requested to talk with Chico. So, Greg, if you want to unmute yourself, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much. I just want to tell Chico I love him. I loved hearing him for months and months and months at night. I love when you filled in during the day. I felt you should have had a full-time day job on the station. You give great analysis. You have a different, you're not just one-sided like a lot of the people are. You're open to hearing everything. You'll be critical if you have to. Some of the hosts or whatever will not do that. It's almost like they feel like they're tied to have to suck the ass of the other people. So I always appreciated how you didn't do that. Thanks, Chico.
Greg, thank you for the call. I appreciate that. Bohm, is there any particular reason why you are, and Michael Bohm, for those of you just joining us, Bohm is joining us in studio. He's training along with the great Nick Padone. And Bohm was my producer at another station where I hosted a show called Chico After Dark. Bohm, you are laughing hysterically. Did you find some of what Greg said not true or like an exaggeration? Do you think that was my Uncle Greg? Because I do not have an Uncle Greg.
I just wanted to tell Greg that his check is in the mail.
I think Bohm might have paid off that. Bohm might have paid off that Twitter Space speaker.
Is that what we're...
No.
That's
absolutely not true.
Thank you, Greg.
There you go, Greg.
I'm glad Greg's still on the line. Thank you, Greg, because Bohm's in here laughing hysterically, and I thought this was a guy speaking from the heart.
It is from the heart. I've never met you. It is. I mean, I listen to, I love obviously the morning show with, and no, I mean, I don't know you. I've never talked to you ever in my life. But no, I just used to love sitting on my deck, having a beverage.
Take that, Bohm.
Especially in the summer, and just turning you on and listening to you.
Greg, I appreciate you checking in, buddy. And seriously, the kind words mean more than you know. And hope you'll keep listening to us and watching us now. Yeah, that's the other thing. People have to, they got to see this.
For sure.
This mug. And when you say you have a face made for radio, but now all of a sudden there's a video camera right here. Hello. Is Greg still, do we have, Nick, is there some I didn't want to, we got somebody else? Go ahead.
We're good.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good hearing from Greg, even if some were not as receptive as others to what he had to say.
We do have some comments still rolling in on YouTube on this whole thing. And again, you could, give a call if you're free. 216-626-7901 is that number. We're also live on Twitter Spaces. If people want to come join and talk with Chico live on the program, D. Solsky comments, and it kind of gives the one outlier to what you're saying, Chico, and is that they handled the Ray Rice situation. He said, what did he get, 2 or 4 games? Then the video comes out and it's Ray Rice is done. I think that's what's the saying? The exception and not the rule is how they handle that.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with Diesel. He's a good dude. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. See, when they have to, that's what the NFL hates the most. I mean, when they cannot, it's staring them right in the face. Like, here's all the evidence, right? Here it is. Here's Ray in the elevator and. Oh man! All right. Well, now we really have to investigate. I mean, because they don't do any investigating. They never ever. There's nothing that and even if they are investigating, like Daniel Snyder said, he hired. This was the funniest one too, Daniel Snyder, because every team says that something happens and there's allegations and. We've hired this firm to look into these allegations. This is taken very seriously here at blank blank, and we will not tolerate this behavior at all. Okay, so what did your that firm that you hired, Dan? What did they have to say? Oh, they didn't find any wrongdoing. Really? Because the U.S. attorney did, the feds did, but wow, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. All right, hey, coming up at 2:30. So in about what are we looking at here? About 20 minutes. John Fanta, the local boy, does very, very well. He is an up and comer. I shouldn't even say up and he's already there. Working with Fox, working with the Big East Network, and he will join us talking hoops coming up at 2:30. Final Four: San Diego State, FAU, Miami, and UConn. Question we posed earlier, if you want to chime in on that, you can do so on the phones, 216-626-7901, or on YouTube. Go to YouTube and type in there that little bar that says search, that little eyeglass or spyglass thing. Yeah, you type in there the Chico Bormann Show. It'll pop up. Hit subscribe, and we appreciate it. But is this Final Four, San Diego State, FAU, Miami, and UConn, is this good? Is it not good? And I guess when I say, like, is it good, is this something that you'd rather see over, say, chalk? Like, it's one thing to want those upsets, and we do get those upsets, and it's one of the greatest things about, maybe the greatest thing for some of you, about March Madness is the upsets. But a lot of times it's the first few rounds, right? Very rarely do you see, I'd say, yeah, it is very rare, that they advance to the Elite Eight, now the Final Four. Like, of these four teams, there was a lot of smoke about UConn heading into the tournament. I mean, there was a lot of, and then you saw them play their first two games, and it was like, wow, okay, these guys are on another level and still are on another level. I mean, they absolutely destroyed Gonzaga. And we said on Friday, Gonzaga doesn't play any defense, but they absolutely destroyed Gonzaga. So maybe UConn, but you can't tell me. Miami, yeah, great team. Obviously, a tremendous coach in Jim Larinaga. You didn't have him. You weren't thinking about them possibly winning it all. FAU, come on. If you did, it's because your friend's daughter goes to FAU. And that's fine. Like I said, Nick, I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. The people that have the best chance of winning the brackets are the people that, basically fill it out because they like the mascot, they visited that city, they have kids or know of friends' kids that go to a city. If you're breaking this down, look at it, well, San Diego State, they play really good D. Creighton, though, they might be able to expose that a little bit if they can. Creighton, they can shoot the ball a little bit better than San. If you're doing that, you don't have a chance.
So my brother, Chico, get this. I'll give him a shout out, Anthony. I'm sure he's tuned in on a spring
good Italian name.
On a spring break from Akron. So I'm sure he's tuned into his brother in the Chico Bormann Show. In the midst,
you kind of say that very facetiously.
In the midst of his spring break, and his 21st birthday right around the corner this week too. But get this, he's a big basketball fan, big sports fan like me. We're from a big sports family. Like us, though, college basketball, you watch, maybe you start tuning in the conference championships. You're not tuned in all year. He's a big NBA fan, big NFL fan. College basketball, casual until tournament time. Fills out 2 brackets, like always. Wins both pools. He's up like $1,000 today.
Don't fill more than one bracket out.
He's in two different friend groups.
But if you win it, though, that's, yeah.
And he won both.
Really?
Won both. He's up $1,000 today.
And what have you done?
Not that. I've lost my last 16 bets. I've said this everywhere. I've said this everywhere.
Whoa. We need a breaking news sounder. That's not true. You're exaggerating, right?
I swear. We're on Spaces on my phone, or I would show you. I have all the screenshots.
You're going to have to move in with Dave? Is Dave going to have to house you in his basement or something? 16?
I have lost my last 16 sports bets, and I'm not betting until opening day.
I'd ask that you don't even. I think you need a 90-day. We won't call it a suspension, But you need 90 days to gather your thoughts.
I'm a typical sportsbook ambassador, so part of my job entails me betting. So go download that Typical Sportsbook, use promo code Chico, and you'll get $200 in free bets to not waste your own money on the Typical Sportsbook. Yeah, but yeah, I am on an ultimate.
Don't think I'm gonna glide. That was a perfect boom. Did you notice that perfect play? He's a company guy. He's a corporate guy. I think even Typico would be like, dude, we don't want you losing 16 in a row.
No, but yeah, exactly.
Who's this Padone kidding?
I need to see one go through is what I need. So I said it. I'm not betting until opening day. I'm done with college basketball. College basketball, I was on fire through the conference championships. I mean, I was up insane amount. I gave it all right back. So taking a break until opening day.
You haven't won one game in the tournament? And I know it's been crazy, but like you... Well, Alabama, I know, was your big one.
I won some straight bets in the very first round of 64. Parlays, whole different story. But ever since that first weekend, it's been all south.
Wow, that is that's a drought right there. I mean, that's like
it's Hugh Jackson. It's 0-16 is what I am right now.
Nick Padone's here, baby, and he's about to jump in Lake Erie.
Yeah, we just if I lose my next lose my next bet to go 0-17, I should have to jump in the lake.
Wow. By the way, did you? I know there was a company bonding event. Like I said, it was kind of like in NFL training camps when the guys all get together and they go bowling. There was one for us here. I couldn't make it. I had a very important National League auction baseball draft that lasted more than 4 hours. I had to I finally just tuned out. I'm like, the last reserve spots, to hell. I can't do it anymore. But did you take part in the bonding?
I did. I was at Topgolf yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. Now Dave. Dave, I hear, is really good. A 2-time long drive champion.
Yeah. So Dave is good. I mean, as far as the network is concerned, we've got some golfers. Because, I mean, Dave, really good. Reflog is golfer backwards. He's really good.
It took me like 2 or 3 years before I realized that, by the way.
Yeah, he's in Granville High School Athletics Hall of Fame for golf. So
is he still like a scratch golfer?
He claims now Chris is, despite what you might see on Twitter, he's a very humble guy. So he claims
he does get a lot of crap
that he's taken a little bit of some steps back in his game, especially being a dad, being a single dad. So he claims that he's taken a step back, but I've never seen him golf IRL in real life. But I myself am not a golfer at all.
So his step back is like, oh, the poor guy. He shot a 75 the other day. How does he sleep at night? Poor Reflog. All right. We got John Fanta coming up at the bottom of the hour at 2:30. Looking forward to talking to him. Mentioned what I mentioned about the NFL, and I'm not. This isn't something I'm gonna go on rants about all the time because, I mean, essentially, it kind of does throw a wet blanket on it, but it needs to be said. Like, I mean, I know people at this point are not naive, most of you, and what's going on. I mean, it's money, it's power, and when you have those things, there's a lot that you can, wow, big revelation there, Chico. But it's the lengths now that the NFL goes to, and like I said, Daniel Snyder. Only in the NFL, we have all those cliches, only in Cleveland, only in the NFL can you run your franchise into the ground, lose customers, lose sponsors, not win games, have allegations of sexual misconduct, and the price goes from $800,000 to $6 billion. That's a pretty good gig if you can get it. That's a really good gig if you can get it. But again, those owners' meetings are going on this week in Arizona. And yes, Nick.
Small price to pay to get in that club of $7 million. $7 billion.
Billion. Yeah, that's right.
Where do you fall on the whole? We've gotten some Twitter questions at Chico Show CLE, and with all the owner talk going on right now, I think people want to know, Chico, where you fall in the discussion of, right, this owner stuff is crazy right now, and forget about what's going on with Snyder and Jerry and some of the other ones with this Jimmy and Biscotti beef, especially after the news that we just get today that Lamar Jackson could be on his way out of Baltimore. Jim tweets the show at Chico Show CLE and says, does it feel like the tides are starting to change on Jimmy Haslam a little bit? And once seemed like a guy that everybody hated, now that he gave Deshaun Watson this guaranteed money, maybe people warming up to Haslam a little bit, especially if it's going to start hurting Baltimore, hurting Cincy.
Okay, first of all, Jim, that's a great question. Here's what I would say. Yeah, I mean, it helps, but if Deshaun Watson doesn't return to Deshaun Watson form from 3 years ago, then, Lamar, because right now people are like, oh, well, hey, if there's a silver lining to all this, hey, they may lose Lamar Jackson and the Ravens might really take a huge step back. They've kind of dominated, along with the Steelers for a while. Now you got the Bengals, but they've kind of been cream of the crop and dominating the AFC North for a while now. But it has to include, that has to be followed by Deshaun Watson becoming an all-world quarterback again. He has the talent. We've seen him have the talent. But 700 days off. Okay, there's some things that you can excuse from last year. There are also some things where you're like, wow, that's scary. Hopefully a full off season and he's going to be back to his original form. But I almost feel like he has to win you an AFC title. I'm not saying win you a Super Bowl, okay? Because I mean, yes, it'd be nice, don't get me wrong. But when people say win a Super Bowl, it's tough enough just to get there. So if they were to get there, and then I would say, now hopefully multiple times, but if they can get to a Super Bowl, then I think, yeah, Jimmy Haslam is back in many people's good graces. I mean, the reality of this is, and I've said this many times, there are many people that are just not going to like what the move that they made. And that is their prerogative. That is absolutely your prerogative as a fan, as a whoever, to say, you know what, no, I just can't. I can't get behind that. But at the same time, I think some fans are going to also say, ultimately, does he help us win football games? And does he help us win on the big stage? Does he get us to the big stage? That's going to be, we all know. I mean, we all know that's what it's going to come down to.
I'm with you. And I think to answer John's question, I feel like fans could be very fickle in this way, where people right now are very hot on Jimmy because it's the easy thing to do. Start the season out 0-2. And start the season out 0-3, and we're talking about Stefanski getting fired, then maybe fans are singing a little bit different tune about Jimmy Haslam than they are today. Listen, I'm excited that hopefully that this means Baltimore is taking a step back. Chico, I'm still not willing to take a victory lap. Baltimore is still a very good organization. They could very well, whatever they trade Lamar for, say it comes to it, turn around and draft the next Lamar Jackson.
And that's what they do with Ozzie.
That's
what they do.
Or look at all the movement around the league. I mean, Aaron Rodgers to the Jets isn't a sure thing yet. If that falls through, maybe Ozzie goes knocking there. I mean, maybe they get a veteran somewhere else next year, the next guy that gets disgruntled. I'm not counting out Baltimore down for the count. Enjoy your rebuild, because that's not the kind of organization that they are. And I've seen a lot of this on Twitter, man.
Let me be clear. I don't feel that way. Now, I'm simply saying if Lamar Jackson is done in Baltimore, I mean, he pretty significant piece to that offense. He's been that offense. He's really been that team. I mean, let's face it. If they were to somehow, in this day and age, you manipulate the cap, and if Ozzie and company were able to turn it into, and Eric DeCosta were able to turn that into Aaron Rodgers somehow or whatever, I don't even know if it's feasible, then yeah, obviously. But you just don't, I guess what I'm saying is you don't just lose Lamar Jackson. If they do, I don't know if they're going to lose him. I know he wants traded. I think what Lamar is going to come to realize, and it sucks for him, and I feel for him, not because he's not going to be able to make the rent, but because he deserves every bit of $230 million guaranteed. But the bottom line is, will there be a team? I'll ask you that question. Will there be a team? It's one thing to say, oh, I would love to have Lamar Jackson. Okay. Are you willing to guarantee him $230 million? Well, because that's what it's going to take. And I think Lamar Jackson at the end of the day is probably going to realize, wow, they love me in Baltimore. I tried my best to get $230 million. It's not out there, and it's not out there from any other teams. I'm going to go back to what I know and love.
Yeah, we're truly going to find out. You know, the question that everyone wants to know, and there's really no answer to it yet, was that Deshaun contract the outlier, or is it going to be the new norm? I think we're going to find out very quickly. And by very quickly, I mean the NFL draft is a month away. So, I mean, if somebody's going to trade for the guy, you would think at least that it happens within the next month. I mean, maybe the Indianapolis Colts do it. Say they don't find the quarterback that they like. Say the Vikings with Kwesi, who is here in Cleveland and just was a part of the Deshaun Watson upgrade.
A little Kwesi. All right. I like
he was just here in Cleveland, part of the Deshaun upgrade. Maybe he has seen enough of Kirk Cousins and they're willing to upgrade to Lamar Jackson and willing to pay the price. I'm curious to see. It only takes one team to bite the bullet and to make that trade. I don't think it's going to cost you the 3 first-round picks that Deshaun Watson cost because of the injury past. It's definitely going to cost you that guaranteed cash, though. So I'm willing to see it only takes one team, Chico, and I truly think somebody's going to bite the bullet and do it. There's only so many first-round rookies, and these teams are desperate to win now.
That is a lot of money guaranteed. I mean,
Irsay would do it.
Now, I know that what did I just get done saying? The NFL, it's $25 billion industry, and Daniel Snyder screwed up his entire organization, did nothing but just run it into the ground, losing games, losing customers, losing sponsors, and he's going to sell it for possibly $6-7 billion. So I know that, they're printing money in the NFL. But when you start talking about 230 guaranteed, there's a reason why, even amidst all of this, money making and printing money that the NFL is, there's a reason why no one until Deshaun Watson received $230 million. And again, not that I need to remind everybody, he got $230 million with a hell of a lot hanging over his head. So, wow. I mean, that is a lot of money.
Also, for people that aren't familiar with how that process actually works, I mean, you got to show proof that you have those funds liquid,
and it goes in escrow.
And toss that in an escrow, and it just sits in there to every week when those game checks get cut, he gets a chunk of it. So, you got to show that you have that kind of cash sitting around ready to go if you were Indianapolis or a Minnesota that was ready to pony up for a guy like Lamar Jackson. So that's part of it.
And think about that. Like, I throw the word escrow out like I'm some kind of makes me sound like I know what I'm big financial guy. Well, you gotta throw that money into an escrow, and but seriously, you're right. It's like a credit application. So not every team, and Stephen Bisciotti doesn't feel that he can. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's going to push that envelope. All right, do I see the man, the myth, the legend that is? Can we bring him in now? We got John Fanta. You talk about the local kid that has done very, very well for himself. We are so proud every time we see John Fanta, and he's everywhere. He's all over social media. He's on your television set, the Big East, covering Big East basketball, on Fox covering hoops as well. John Fanta joins us, proud Cleveland native, St. Ignatius grad, and he joins us here on the Chico Bormann Show. I was thinking about this, John. Dick Vitale over the years made such a, part of his deal was he had all of those different, nicknames and the PTPers, and you absolutely are you would be a diaper dandy. I mean, you're still very young, so Dickie V would be referring, he's a diaper dandy. the star is just very, very bright. Welcome to the show, and I know you're probably pretty tired with all the travel, but what an incredible bracket this has been so far.
Well, I appreciate you, Chico, and thank you for having me. And I've always loved your work and loved listening to you. And I'll start by saying this: Cleveland is very, very near and dear to my heart. I love the city. I love the people in it. You know, it makes me emotional every time I talk about the town because I think the world of it and love spending summers back home at a week or two at a time and heading down to Progressive Field. I know that's a happy place for both of us because I feel like that's where Northeast Ohio on a Friday night is just shining to the nth degree. But I'll tell you what, this has been, and thank you for the kind words as well. I love covering this sport because it is unpredictable. College basketball, and it's interesting because the narrative right now on this Monday is, well, I don't know if I can watch this Final Four, and I'm not as interested in it. So you were interested in the first 2 weeks of the tournament. You love the madness, but then when the madness is involved in the Final Four, you're not about it. Well, what'd you think you were signing up for? Okay, if you walk into a Mexican restaurant, you're going to have chips and salsa, and you're going to enjoy it.
Hell
so
yeah!
So if you walked in and I brought out cornbread, you'd be like, well, what the hell is going on in here? Like, Fanta. Come on. I don't know what the deal is. The fact is, college basketball can deliver what no other sport can. Where an FAU, which plays in a 3,000-seat gym, can play in a stadium where 90,000 people can fit into in Houston next weekend. Like, let's embrace the chaos. Will it win in the television ratings? No, probably not. It's not going to. But is it interesting? Could there be a real ripple effect in college sports if FAU or San Diego State is hoisting a trophy? Yeah, there would be a huge one. And that one would be to Greg Sankey or the conference commissioner that wants to change up the NCAA tournament. You could go have a glass of water and head to bed because it shouldn't be altered. It shouldn't be changed. Allow the little engine that could to go on its train track and do things the way that it intends to do.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question, John, and great points there. Is what happened this season? Because again, a lot led up to this. You can start obviously with COVID and you know, guys getting extra year of eligibility. Of course, we know, you know better than anybody, a transfer portal with north of 1,000 kids. But is what happened this year with this Final Four of San Diego State, FAU, Miami, and UConn, is it more of an aberration or could this become the norm?
I think it can become the norm, not to the same degree. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to see more cases like the FAU. But we've had this before, too. Like Shaka Smart and VCU did it, they did it a year ago, a decade ago, rather. Like, it's happened. It has happened, and it's going to happen again. What is it a sign of, Chico? It's a sign of the fact that now a coach at a program can get experienced more quickly than otherwise. You don't have to walk in and take a job and say, and don't we as Cleveland sports fans know this phrase, well, it's going to take 3 to 4 years to engineer this process, and then
or 22.
Yeah, right. Or 22. I mean, I'm still sitting here waiting. That's for a different day.
Yeah.
But I think in college basketball, like I think we're going to see more of it. We're going to see more of it. Now, are we going to see it every year? Come on. No, because last year, COVID made more of an impact on the sport, and you had even more COVID seniors. That's now tapering off. When we get to next year, there'll be very few of those left. The point is, last year you saw Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, and Villanova. Like, this year wasn't the start of some random trend. This year was part of the fact that in this sport, we didn't have a clear-cut great team all year. We didn't. Houston beat up in a bad league. Purdue got off to a strong start, but it took teams time to adjust to what they were doing with an elite big man and a backcourt that nobody saw coming. Nobody had any film or material on and played well. But it really, it's been wide open all throughout the season. I don't think you're going to get that every year. I think next year, and I guarantee you, if you and I are talking a year from now, I can promise you this. If we have a Final Four with 4 name brands, but one team is better than all of them, well, what fun is that? What fun is that? It's nice to talk about the name brands, but if we have a Baylor like we did 2 years ago, which ran ship through everybody and won the national title, do people talk about that? If FAU or San Diego State hoist a national championship trophy, people will not forget that. They'll say, "Hey, they were that team.
See what
they cut down the nets."
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm glad you brought that up because there are, to play devil's advocate here, there are some that say, "Hey, I love the upsets. I love the upsets early on. That's what makes it so great." But when it gets down to the nitty gritty and we get down to the Elite Eight and the Final Four and, of course, Monday night, I want to see chalk. I want to see, strength against strength. And now, here's the thing. Let's say UConn beats Miami. We're going to be talking about your Huskies here in a moment. But UConn beats Miami, and let's say FAU continues this dream run and they upset San Diego State. But then UConn, and it wouldn't be, at this point, watching these guys throughout the tournament, it wouldn't be far-fetched to think UConn blows them out by 25 or 30. There's going to be those fans out there going, well, see, that's why you want the chalk because, in the end, the biggest game of the year on the biggest stage ended up being a snoozer because it was a blowout.
Yeah, and that playing devil's advocate's a good thing there. I would say let's not guarantee the blowout. I don't think that this is a guarantee anywhere. And here's what I would also say to the argument about the early upsets. Okay, as much as this has been a bit random, like we don't have an 11 or a 12 seed in the Final Four. Okay, we have a 9. Now that 9 ended up being able to play a 16 seed in FDU. So all the more reason why Purdue should be kicking itself because they shouldn't have lost that game and to FDU. I mean, they should have. They played horribly. But the point is, like, it's not like FAU has played 38 times, Chico. They've won 35. This is not a team that lost 10 games in Conference USA and now is in the Final Four. Yeah, it just shows you that if you get the right pieces, and Jim Larinaga brought this up in the last hour in his media availability, he's like, if you get the right pieces, you can have experience quickly and you can beat anybody. And that's what we're watching right now. So I actually am in the school of thought sometimes where if the first weekend we see teams that pull off upset wins, okay, and then we get to the second weekend and they lose by 30, then I sit there saying, well, that stinks because it ruins the tournament. But like 3 of the Elite Eight games were decided by 7 points or less. 2 of them were decided by a possession. And the one that was decided by 7 was Miami down by 13 to Texas coming back. Not for nothing. But UConn and Miami and all 4 of these teams, we're not talking about the epitome of a Cinderella. We're talking about 4 single-seeded teams that all have single-digit losses. Like, this is more about the Final Four not being agreeable to people's name brand in college basketball than it is about these teams actually being pretty doggone good.
And I think with, I think with FAU, because you brought this up, like some people may not realize if they were to go on and win it all, I think they would finish with like 37 wins. You mentioned the regular season. So the issue with it is, and this is, again, you can flip this and say that's what's great about college basketball. It's great about the tournament. Well, they can only play the teams that are in their conference, right? So you look at them and you say, well, yeah, they got that nice record, but what are they going to do? Well, we've seen what they've done. The game that shocked me more than any, and I mean, there's been a few, but I watched Tennessee bludgeon Duke. Like Tennessee, it was like a men amongst boys, and I'm like, all right, well, FAU, it's been fun, but they handled them. I mean, I just, and that showed me, like, you know what? We don't really know what these guys are made of or aren't made of. You're seeing it right now. You may not have known coming out of their regular season with all the wins and maybe the lack of competition, but they just beat a team. Yes, they struggle offensively. Tennessee does at times a lot, but they bludgeoned Duke, and FAU just raced right by them.
They did. They did. And you know what? Tennessee was a team that, as a result of their offensive issues, they could be susceptible to losing to anybody. That's just it. It was a wide open year in college basketball.
Yep.
And so you can't go off one game in this sport this year. A lot of people try to watch a team and then they say, well, I think they're great. I'm going to bet them in the next game. Folks, you can't do that. It's not a game-to-game thing. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids. The ball could Alabama shot 3 for 20-something from 3 against San Diego State. Now, San Diego State's defense has been fantastic. But yeah, I think that does sum it up. And that's the Duke team that, again, youth doesn't win this time of year.
Yep.
They were young. And they didn't have Paolo Banchero walking through that door or Zion Williamson walking through that door. So it's a sport that, you know, it is wide open, and it's not just coincidence. That's not going to change. So could we see this group of Final Four teams again? Well, sure, we could. Now, I'll be contrarian and play devil's advocate with you. We've got this Final Four, and I get that it's different names. But since 1999, one school's won more national championships than every other in the country. That's Connecticut with 4. If Connecticut wins next Monday night, that'll be 5. Nobody else in college basketball has more than 3. Just saying, if you want to play devil's advocate about big name brands and who's won, UConn, it's been a little bit in the last 10 years, but for a period of time here, for the last quarter century, they've been on this stage more than anybody else.
Okay, I want to talk about UConn, I promise, in just a few moments, because I know you've got to be chomping at the bit to talk about them and really the Big East, which fared pretty well. But I got to ask you the other question, the other topic today, other than, wow, can you believe this is the Final Four, is San Diego State and Creighton. Did you see how that last minute or that last play came to be? And people say, well, you know, they only shot 19 free throws. Those are 2 physical teams, San Diego State especially. And, well, the officials called it a certain way all game, so they have to let that go. And then there's some that say, well, okay, even if they let that go for much of the game, a foul's a foul, and you got to call that. So and I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. Honestly, I said that earlier in the show. What's your takeaway from that?
Yeah, so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer either. I mean, there's the person that goes by the book and says that Ryan Nembhard contacted the body of Darian Trammell, and so as a result, by rule, it's a foul. Now, I called 3 officials up after the game, and I said to them, all right, what would you have done? And they said, you couldn't have paid me to blow my whistle there.
Yep.
They wouldn't have done it. And you know why? You know what I thought was interesting? Because I said, well, isn't it a foul? And they're like, well, yeah, I could see the argument that it was a foul. But they said 2 things that stuck out to me that every talking head had an opinion on this yesterday, okay? First off, we can all acknowledge this. It was an awful way for a highly competitive game to end. Whether you were rooting for the Aztecs, the Blue Jays, whatever you had, like, forget about it. Like, it was a rough way for the game to end. Whether it was for Creighton or for San Diego State, it was for the Aztecs. The kid got fouled. By rule, by definition, it was a foul. Okay? He hit his body. But everybody out there that, you know, we got a lot of people who think that they're absolute geniuses. Let's just be honest. They're like, well, you have to treat each play as each play. You have to take each play individually. I'm sorry. But there's a lot of football fans out there. You think on 4th and 11, when a team's down by a touchdown and they're driving, if there's a little bit of contact over the middle, that the flag's not getting pulled out to prolong the game?
That's what the rule book says.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Come on, people, wake up. Officials have feel. If officials didn't have feel, whether it's good feel or bad feel, is a different story.
So you don't think he should have blown? I mean, I know we said right or wrong, but it sounds like you don't think he should have. He should have blown.
No, let him play. Let the game be decided in overtime. By the way, in my opinion, the more deserving team won the game.
Yeah, I would
thought
agree
San
with
Diego
that.
State outplayed Creighton.
Yes,
I did. So I'm not going off that. I'm just saying, would we be talking about this if he let them play?
Okay. We're talking to John Fanta.
No.
He is with college basketball on Fox, also the host of the Big East Shoot Around. And you can follow him on Twitter at John Fanta. All right, buddy. UConn. There was some talk about UConn going into the tournament, okay? But when you see the way they've played, and I'll be the first to say, I haven't had a chance to watch them all season long. You've had a front row seat, which is why it's perfect we get to talk to you today. But UConn just looks like they're just better than everybody else. I remember Danny Hurley saying a couple of years ago, get us now, because in a couple years, we're coming. And, well, that time is now. And, I mean, how has this transpired? Take us through Connecticut over the last, say, 2-3 years under Danny Hurley.
Well, I think it's transpired off of, first off, Dan and his staff recruiting outstandingly to Stores and really recruiting guys that fit who they are, which is, hey, if you want to get better at the game of basketball, if you want to be committed, come out to Stores. Chico, have you ever been near Stores, Connecticut?
I have not.
It's a deeply wooded area, and driving up to the campus makes it look like a farm. You wouldn't know that you're in the state of Connecticut. There's one thing to do if you're a basketball student athlete at UConn. Hoop. You could avoid the distractions. You can go into that facility at any hour of the day, and you know that when you hit the floor, you will have a full house at Gamble Pavilion, and people will embrace you because you play for UConn. So Dan Hurley has totally embraced that. He's leaned into it. He's a Jersey City guy. His father, Bob Sr., is a high school basketball legend.
Yep.
He lived in the shadows of his dad. He lived in the shadow of his brother, who played at Duke. Dan hasn't had this glamorous path, but it almost fits UConn. It does fit UConn because he coaches with a chip on his shoulder. He's not out there to be loved. He doesn't mind if he's hated. He doesn't mind if he's on the wrong end of attention from fans. He likes to be a little bit of a villain. And in a lot of ways, that's what you have to be if you're the head coach at Connecticut, because you're out to win and win national championships. Now, what has happened the last 2 years? Last year, this team played in Buffalo in the NCAA tournament. They played New Mexico State. They got beat. They played really a bad game, and they got exposed. They got exposed for not having enough firepower. They didn't have enough depth in the game. And New Mexico State was just better than them. Teddy Allen had a massive game and upset them. The press conference after that game, Dan Hurley alluded to it. He's like, we got to make some changes around here. We got to do some things differently. So he meets with Andre Jackson, Adama Sanogo, Jordan Hawkins. He meets with the guys who are going to be back. And he said, you'll never be in the position that you've been in now again. I'm going to go into the transfer portal. I'm going to get role guys. See, Chico, UConn didn't need some superstar player. This is where the portal's great.
Yep.
You call players and say, hey, you're at East Carolina. You're really good. But do you want to win a championship? You're going to come play for me. You're not going to do that at East Carolina. This is what the coaches are saying.
Sure.
Or you call up Texas A&M and say, hey, you had a great run in the NIT. You want to make sure that you're not doing it in the NIT next year? You're going to come play for us here at Connecticut. We win championships here. He went out and identified role players. He brought in a high-level freshman class. Great freshman classes need experienced players to flourish. And that's what's happened at UConn this year with Alex Caravan and the 7'2" tree, Donovan Clingan. Clingan and Sanogo make each other better. Andre Jackson has become indispensable between his athleticism. If you haven't watched him closely, folks, you got to watch Jackson of UConn this weekend. The guy would be he would be playing in the NBA if he could shoot the ball a little bit more consistently. And if you're an NBA fan, watch Jordan Hawkins this weekend.
Oh,
He's shooting the ball like Ray Allen or Rip Hamilton. That's how good he's been. So they have found the equation, and it actually came through failure. It came through failure of last year and being forced to reevaluate who they were. They didn't need to go out and change their culture, but they needed to find depth. And they found that depth. And by not necessarily having the Drew Timme or Zach Edey or larger-than-life leader, they actually have played extremely well because they've got everybody just bought into what their role is. And those pieces and parts have made for Connecticut getting back to the mountaintop of college basketball.
So you look at, things that have changed the landscape of college basketball, and obviously you mentioned the transfer portal, which I think is huge. Obviously, we've had the one and dones for a while. At some point, I think when the new CBA is made with the NBA, it might be out of high school, which I think is going to be terrible for the college game, unfortunately, because I love it and I know you love it. But the other thing is NIL, and wouldn't you know it, now it's not fair for anyone to look at Miami because, by the way, Jim Larrañaga, I've been saying this for a while. Jim Larrañaga, we're talking about a guy that took George Mason fun. This guy can flat out coach. Flat out coach.
Yes.
And but the other thing is you've got the NFL, you got Joseph Ruiz, and the women are in the Elite Eight, and the men are in the Final Four. It helps. It helps. But if Miami is UConn is installed as a favorite. If Miami is going to beat UConn, what's the recipe? What's the recipe to knock off the Connecticut Huskies on Saturday?
Yeah, the recipe for Miami is to get into a shootout, get into a high-scoring game, play their playground style. I mean, Larrañaga lets his guys go. And, Jim has kind of captured this whole – Miami is kind of like when you went to your grandparents' house. You could do whatever the hell you wanted. But you knew that there were rules because you respected the hell out of your grandparents. That's Miami. Jim Larrañaga, 73. But he's aged like a fine wine because he just lets his guys do their thing. And they're doing it at an extremely high level. And what's great, Chico, here's the formula. The formula is Isaiah Wong, Nigel Pack, and Jordan Miller all play in the game that they're capable of, which is they're all capable of that. All three. How many teams can say this? You've got three different players who have gone for a 20-plus point game in the NCAA tournament. That's dangerous. Yeah. That's dangerous. Miami can't get stuck in a half-court game. If they get stuck in a half-court game, they will wear down to UConn's depth and size. And it's imperative in this game that Norcat O'Meara, the big man, that he stays out of foul trouble against Adama Sanogo and Donovan Clingan. Because Miami doesn't have anything behind O'Meara to guard the bigs inside. The formula is pace, offensively being in sync, so scoring 80-plus points. They're going to need to have a high-scoring game. And then they're going to need to hope that after Hawkins, the combo of Joey Calcaterra, Tristan Newton, Alex Caravan, that they're not hitting three-point shots. Make UConn try to beat you in a three-point game, a three-point shootout. UConn could win, but that's the poison I'd be picking if I was Miami.
Okay, so last thing, because I want to get to the Johnnies and Rick Pitino and all that stuff, but who do you have going to the championship game, obviously, on Monday night? So, again, Final Four, San Diego State, FAU, Miami, UConn. Who's winning Saturday? Who's winning Monday?
I've got UConn. I think they win the game by 8 to 10 points. I think it'll be closer than people think, but I do think that they win. I think the size of Sanogo is just too much for Miami to handle. And I like Florida Atlantic.
Ooh, wow. Okay. Against that tough, physical San Diego State.
Yeah, so I read somewhere yesterday, I didn't realize this, that Florida Atlantic is 11-1 in games decided by 5 points or less. They know how to finish. They've closed. I mean, they know how to close, and they've done it. They did it against Tennessee. They did it against Kansas State. John L. Davis is a total dog. The guy's just a leader. He's a playmaker. Nick Boyd is clutch. I mean, he knows how to drive the lane, make things happen. Elijah Martin, Brian Greenlee, Brandon Weatherspoon, like Chico, all those guys have hit big shots for FAU. I like this team because they're balanced. They don't really. The reason why San Diego State has gone this far is that they've cut off a team's best individual talent in the backcourt, and they've made it really hard for teams to hit threes. FAU doesn't over rely on one piece, and they know how to close. I'm taking the Owls.
Okay. I got to ask you about St. John's. They get Rick Pitino, and you know, look, you had a front row seat for the Big East, and the Big East all year, man. If people didn't pay attention, you had some good basketball. Obviously, UConn, but Creighton, you just saw them get knocked off by San Diego State, Xavier, Marquette. St. John's is interesting because, you know, it had such a storied I'm going back because I'm older, but Louis Carnesecca and those great teams. And then I'm looking at, like, to me, the story of the tournament, if you want to talk about player, was Marquise Noel. And there's a kid from, you know, Brooklyn, and they love their basketball in New York. You know that better than anybody. Is Rick Pitino going to be able to get that excitement back? Is he going to be able to keep some of those guys like a Noel from going to Kansas State and Manhattan and staying, locally in New York? Like, what do you make of the Pitino hire for the Johnnies?
He said it at his press conference. If it's not a matter of if, it's not a matter of when. It's going to happen. You could have any feeling about Rick Pitino. I'm sure there's people watching this show right now who say, oh, guy shouldn't be coaching. But I'll tell you what, folks, he is as good of a coach in the sport of basketball that you're going to find. He is a winner. A little bit of insanity to him. That's part of what makes him. He will work tirelessly. This man, at the age of 70, is up at 6 a.m., works out, and is in his office until about 6 p.m., 6:30. If he has to stay till 8 or 9, he'll do that. He will work tirelessly to get this thing going. And here's the thing. St. John's is a sleeping giant. The days of Walter Berry, Chris Mullin, why can't Rick Pitino keep those players around? Pitino's going to have money. I'm already hearing we're talking 7 figures of NIL money. That's happening at St. John's. That's going to happen. Mike Rapoli, former founder of Vitamin Water, is going to support this program. They're going to play a lot of games at Madison Square Garden. They're going to get the Garden rocking again. It might be harder to get a St. John's ticket than a Knicks ticket in a year or two. I'm not kidding you. I think this thing's going to get turned around and quickly because I think Rick Pitino is out to show everybody, you know, all those vacated wins and asterisks and stuff. I think Pitino's out to say, I'm going to make you forget that so bad because I'm about to write this final chapter and I'm going to have the last word. Chico, he's one of the few guys that when he talks, you actually believe what he's going to say. This thing will turn itself around because now he's in New York. He's from New York. And the guy, all he's done wherever he's gone in the college game is win. And he can do that in the Big East. He could do that in the high level in the Big East. Okay, so I can't let you out of here until I touch on this, and I know we're running out of time. But one of, and you know, I'm one of millions, I'm sure, but one of my favorites in the game of college basketball and all of sports is Bill Raftery. I'm jealous of you that you get to work with Raft. You have worked with her, that you know Bill Raftery personally. I was reading an article, Seth Davis, who, of course, is with CBS. He also writes for The Athletic. He wrote a piece on Raftery. I'm sure you read it. And he said something in there that I never gave it much thought. But you've been in the business for a while. I've been doing this for a while. You know, I mentioned Dick Vitale earlier when you came in, just with a little joke there. But people love Dick Vitale, but there's also some that, you know what, okay, it's a little too much. Bill Raftery has nobody. Hey, nobody criticizes Bill Raftery, and it's not a matter of I don't know why. I do know why. I just still think that speaks to his greatness. Can you get Bill Raftery at any point on this here show? On your show?
Yes, I'm putting you on the spot, and I know it's a tough ask, buddy. You can tell me.
I think we could. I mean, I'll talk to Raft here this offseason.
I'm
Let's
a
see if we can
huge
get him on.
Raft. I love Raft.
Let's see if we can get him on the show. I've never been asked that before. Bill, here's the thing about Raft. Okay. Raft is unbelievable. I've never met a harder worker. I've never met a nicer guy. He's humble. He's funny.
Oh, man.
He's witty. I'll give you 2 great Raft stories. So last year, I get a call from my bosses at Fox saying, can you get to Hartford for UConn and Creighton tomorrow night for FS1? And I just texted back. I was on my way to drop off a rental car from a previous assignment. I said, I'll be there. I think I bought my clothes at the Hartford Mall for the game. I just started driving to Hartford because I live in New Jersey now, for those wondering. So a couple hour drive. So I start driving to Hartford. Chico, I had no idea who I was working the game with. 10 minutes into my drive to Hartford, I get a call. It's from Raft. I answered on the 3rd ring. And I answer, and he looks, and he says to me, he goes, wow. He goes, you've gotten big time enough that you have to wait 3 effing rings to answer my phone call. I said, Coach, he goes, well, meet me at Max, meet me at for dinner at 6. I go and meet him. We have dinner. He looks at the wine menu and he goes, the Irish side of this wine menu doesn't agree with me. He's got great one-liners that make you sometimes say, what? So then we start talking, we have dinner, and I had never worked with a game with Raft before. Now I had a steak, okay? Chico, great steakhouse in Connecticut. And, Raft like eats a bite of his food and like takes the plate and like slides it down to me. So we were there so long because the guy loves to go out. And he says to me at the end of the night, he looks at me and he goes, Jesus, kid, I don't know if you know how to talk, but you sure as hell know how to eat. And I fell out of my chair. It was so funny the way he said it. And he just is, then you're on the air the next night with him and he's just quick. He'll say, he turns to me at one point, he goes, they run the floor really well. I know that's something you can relate to. Like, of course it's not something I can relate to. And then he'll say, he looks at me at one point in the broadcast, Chico, and he says, oh, these coaches are huffing and puffing at each other. Kind of like you with the bartender last night. Meanwhile, my fiance's at home texting me, what the hell is he talking about? I said, honey, I didn't do any huffing and puffing with anybody. So he's just a gem. He's a treasure. We'll try to make this happen here this offseason.
He is John Fanta. Follow him on Twitter at John Fanta. Just an exceptional talent, and I truly mean that. You've worked very, very hard. You make Northeast Ohio very, very proud. Continued success to you. Hope to talk to you soon. And, man, if you can land Raftery for me, I will be forever in your debt. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Chico. And for the Clevelanders out there who are saying, oh, he must be New York or he's got this cap on that he's rocking. I'm not a cap wearer inside my house. My hair is a freaking mess, and I got to see a bartender. I need to see one of those. I need to see a barber ASAP this afternoon.
If you could combine, get a bartender and a barber, now that's living. Now, someone like you could probably pull that off. Thanks,
Chico. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thanks, John. You too, buddy. All right, we are out of time. Good stuff from John Fanta, as always. Again, Chico Bormann Show. You can follow it on YouTube. Go to the search little icon there. Type in the Chico Bormann Show. Hit subscribe. You're in. Also on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Talking a lot of baseball next 2 days. Zach Meisel looking at tomorrow. Also Wednesday, our regular midweek segment with our buddy Brett Boone, former All-Star second baseman. Had some great years with the Mariners. Guess who the Guardians open up with coming up on Thursday? The Seattle Mariners. So looking forward to that and much, much more. And we, of course, appreciate you as well. Again, 216-626-7901. Write down that number. Want to hear from you the rest of this week. We've got the Reflog Show later on. We got Bernie and Hanford later on. We got so much coming your way. Thank you for joining us here on the Big Play Network.